Good morning. It is Thursday. Having just a little bit of technical difficulty here with this cord being wound up. Um, we are with you on this morning. There's going to be a storm this afternoon, according to the weather people. I hope, from what I understand, it has passed through Georgia, and I pray that all those that I know in that area further south is doing well in the storm. And it looks like we have Elder Hall, who is somewhere near some food.
It's breakfast time. I'm at Perkins, and
Oh, yeah, my frittata's in the oven now, so we're good.
I'm thinking about getting something small here so I can just kind of munch while we talk a little bit. So, excuse me while I
Oh.
eat breakfast while we talk.
Okay. Um, so, um, do we have any thoughts before we hit our topic for today? Any cleanup
Random.
from last week and
All right. Well, first of all, I'm an uncle. My brother had his
mm,
baby boy.
all
So,
right.
so I'm happy about that. And
Awesome.
I was supposed to go live the last couple of nighs, but I'm so happy I can't. My thoughts are a little scattered, so I really can't, put out what I'm going to say. But I'm just delighted. Um, Another thing, I want to say this to all the folks who potentially might watch, who I engage with conversations on these platforms. I always say, if you think something, bring it. I love a good discussion. Um,
How's it going?
Things are going well.
Could I get you some coffee, juice, or anything to start?
Coffee would be great.
Do you need a minute to look?
Yeah, just a little bit longer.
I'm gonna grab coffee. My name's Star if you need me, okay?
Thanks, Star. I appreciate it. It makes it's never a fail. I never get the pretty waitress. I always get
You know
the uh,
what?
the
Stop it.
methed out white waitress
You know
without
what?
fail.
Oh,
So
you
anyway,
want that Alicia Keys looking waitress. That yeah. Yeah.
I just want one that didn't.
Let me know how that works out for you.
I just want one that didn't smoke meth before she came to work. That's all. That's all I want. One that
Okay,
one that
you
don't have meth teeth. That's all.
moving right along. Let's pray
Moving
for
right
the
along.
waitress and pray
But
for her.
exactly,
Um, and
exactly. And we
we'll
move
go
right along.
forward. So
So
are we ready to begin, or do we? Is that our cleanup for the week? You just need a waitress that's not looking
no,
like
no.
she's on something, and then you need just a big banner that says Uncle, because you're now in that Uncle zone. And Kavanaugh, we're gonna touch that today.
No, why go back and rehash something that I already won? It's already over.
I'm gonna wrap up some utensils real quick for you,
Go
okay?
ahead, go ahead. You got it. So no reason to go back over that. We don't have to go back over that. In fact, the less political we can keep it this morning, the better we are.
The what now?
The less political we can keep it this morning, the better off we
Ah,
are.
but can we talk about foot washing without being political?
Well, no, we're not talking about that. In terms of the text on today, now we have an excellent. We're gonna have an excellent contrast because the way I look at this text and the way you look at this text are two different things. So the question I want to ask you is this: Would you like to discuss the text first as an introduction to the overall discussion from your point of view, and then I'll discuss the text from mine, and then we'll go into the overall topic after we do that.
Um, is that easier? I don't know.
Well, I guess because I mean, if we give because I think we got two different takes on it. Now,
Okay,
my
we
take is
definitely do. We definitely,
yeah.
well, and I say that we have two different takes, but I have a feeling that the more we dialogue about it, we're going to meet back at a common ground.
I'm sure we
I
will.
think it's almost impossible for us not to,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
because we have such a similar frame,
Right.
and um, I just happen to have my handy dandy.
You need
So,
that. You need that. You need that.
and
You need that second in your Bible first.
oh, why you playing? I got my Bible. No,
Glory to God. Now you
B.
should do me a favor.
Got my name on the front of it and everything.
Could you
You
type
know
the
that
text?
makes it official, right?
Stop. Type the text. Are you
Okay,
there?
so yeah, I'm sorry. It's freezing and it's probably I don't know. We have another storm coming, and then plus I have a child that's home from school
Oh.
today who I'm sure is on the internet.
Tell,
And
tell, tell,
so
tell,
that's
tell the kid to do something else. Tell the kid to get off the internet right
I
now
know, right?
so we can do this. We can ready to change lives right quick. All right. Well then,
Okay, so you need me to put what up? What is it you need me to put up?
put the text that we're talking about. Put the text up.
John 13. I'm on my iPad and I don't know how to type and be on
Oh,
here at the same time. You ask so much of me.
I, you know,
Okay.
I'm between this and just
Okay, I
an
think I got
omelet.
it.
So I'm just
Let me
so
give you another second.
yeah. Give me about 3 minutes. I'll have to
Dude,
decide
just
about
get
that.
an
All right, I can
omelet
turn
and
that
some
into an omelet. I
pig
can
and be
add
over
any
it.
ingredients to your eggs for 50 cents for each ingredient if you are interested.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So John 13. All
As
right. So
the
here.
world watches David order breakfast.
There we go. It ain't the world yet. All right, so let me give you this. Let me give you my take on this text,
Okay, I
and then
put it up
you
there.
can
John
talk.
13, right? That's
Okay,
where we're
right.
at.
All right. So what we have here is John taking on the traditional story of the Passion. All right, the beginning of the Passion. And now, in order for you to understand my take on the text, understand how I see John. John is writing this fourth gospel, or he's writing his account some years, 20, 30 years after he's seen all these other gospel accounts around. And he sees the church has gotten into some bad habits. They've gotten into some very interesting places. And he thinks the church's mission has gotten skewed. Remember, he writes this text to the believer. This text is not written to evangelize, it's
Exactly.
written to the believer. So the emphasis of of the text is purposeful. All right, there's purpose behind it. So what happens here is John takes the traditional story of Jesus' passion, and he takes us to the upper room scene, but he minimizes the importance of the ritual of communion, and he maximizes the service of foot washing. And he does it because he sees the church that has gotten steeped into traditions, gotten steeped into ritual and practice, like all the other religions around it, and it's not distinguishing itself through service. And because it's not distinguishing itself through service, he uses this text to call them back to their original purpose. And he says, he has in Jesus' mouth saying things like, if you don't let me wash your feet, then you can't have any part of me at all.
Right.
And so what happens is now the church is called to service, and it's being led into service by the head of the church, being Jesus himself. So now this is so I see it as as a revivalistic call back to your original purpose, not just the simple message that not just the overall message of service, but a wider call to a universal or a Catholic church, if you will, small C Catholic, universal church, that hey, stop worrying about drinking the bread. Drinking the wine and eat the bread, or stop worrying about the feast and the festivals, and let's get to our job and serve the world and serve humanity. So that's what I got. Go ahead.
Okay,
What you
so
got?
you think that so you're putting it in line with the Great Commission?
I'm 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 taking it a step further than that. I'm saying to you that he's saying that the church has been established and the Great Commission is in effect. But what they're doing now by winning souls is they're winning souls for the purposes of vanity. They ain't doing nothing but just win
Oh,
souls. They just there.
okay. Aha.
Nobody's serving nobody.
Okay.
Nobody deferring anybody. So
Okay.
that's what
So
that.
this is a pushback against the vanity of the early church.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
the vain practice of just ritualism. You know, so glad I'm here. I'm so glad that I'm saved. I've been saved all day. No evil have I done. Oh, but also no service have I done either.
You know what? You know what?
You know.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So how is it my turn now?
Go ahead. You got it.
Okay.
It's you.
So your picture's still froze, so I can't see what's going on with you on my end. I don't know what that's
You can
about.
hear me. You can hear me
I
though,
can
right?
hear you, but your picture's
Okay.
froze. Like you just have this look on your face that's just stuck on the screen now. It's funny.
That probably I probably just had that look. Period.
But amazingly, when I go back and watch them, where these stuck places are, they're not on the recording,
Oh, that's
just
good.
are on my view. So, um,
Well, I'm not stuck on my side.
okay, well, good. So
Yeah.
it'll probably be fine when I download it. But anyway, okay. So here's the reason why I take foot washing and I define it as from liberation to empowerment
Mhm.
is for some of the very reasons that you mentioned, because
Mhm.
because of this move from ritual to
Mhm.
staying focused on what we're really assigned to do.
Mhm.
And if you will, uh, in some ways, it is this ecclesia versus koinonia, the
Okay.
political church piece versus the church as a sense of community.
Okay.
And so, as a community, we become unified in that, if you will, Great Commission. So, and then the other thing about my reading of John 13 is I have trouble reading 13 in isolation without John 12.
Okay.
And because what happens when Mary does this hospitable act,
Mhm.
there was this tension that Judas brings up about, okay, this was expensive. We could have used that money. We could have sold that while you pouring it on his feet.
Mhm. Mhm.
That kind of approach, but also just in the context of Mary herself. And what I mean by that is um,
Oh yeah, I'm
the
ready. Go
the
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
communion is whenever we observe the ordinances of the
How do you
church,
want your
the
eggs?
communion, the foot
Scrambled
washing,
Did you want bacon or
um,
sausage?
bacon.
Bacon. Anything
those
else for you?
are the times that
Uh,
this is so funny.
no, can I get a blueberry muffin instead of the pancakes?
You can.
Let me
You
do
just
that.
want scrambled eggs, bacon, and blueberry muffin?
Yeah, that'll do it.
All right, I'll get you fixed up, okay? Let me
Thank
know
you.
if I can
Thank you.
help.
Can I get another spoon?
Yes,
I know I have one here, but I'm gonna get another one.
I got you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Marvin. I'm sorry.
Okay, so um, the the ordinances of the church
Right.
are very defining for me. And what I mean by that is they're not just defining for me in the context of understanding salvation and my personal walk with Jesus Christ, but it
Right.
also is very defining for me because that is the very time that I am absolutely sure of my acceptance or rejection as a woman
Hmm.
in ministry.
That's interesting.
Because as a chaplain, you don't fit in with the elders, you don't fit in with the evangelist. There's not a department for that because how many of them are there in a jurisdiction? So, how many are there in a local church? And so, oh, here's this person. What do we do with her? Because it's a her, so she can't go there. And she's a her, but she doesn't do that. And so
Well, see, well, no, that's a different problem now. You, now,
but I'm just saying but that feeds my understanding of Mary because Mary is doing something that everybody else is looking at her going, what are you doing?
Okay, okay.
Do you understand
And
what I'm saying?
I do see that. I mean, from your standpoint, I do see why the Mary character would, that action by that character would take on significance. And I can even see why you read the two texts together, especially if you're saying that Mary is in effect teaching Jesus something. If this is the kind of the the text gives us these moments where women happen to encounter Jesus and give him a different level of knowledge, kind of a different an experience. They give him what is it? Gnosko is knowledge that you gain, you have in a book, but oida is experiential knowledge, right? So they give Jesus this oida moment where there's this kind of this aha moment, like the woman with the daughter who Jesus says, I'm not going to give the children's meat to the dogs, and she's persisting, and she kind of teaches Jesus, if you will, or gives Jesus the benefit of her experience that he would otherwise not have, being rejected as a woman and denied, and then you get this
Is it
Mary
not
text here.
dangerous, though, to say that Jesus is teachable? Is Jesus teachable? He is the Son of the living God.
Well, here's
We're
well
teaching
then,
Jesus.
I mean that's gonna open up a whole different can of
Well,
theological
I mean, but the reason
words.
why I say that
But
is because you've said that in a couple of different ways,
right,
and
right,
I
right,
know
right,
that
right.
like as people are watching this and viewing this, that's going to be a pushback, if you will.
Well, then let me push back. Then let me make the argument clear. It cannot be debated that God, being who He is, would have never had the personal experience of being sick. We
Okay.
know God has never been sick. We know
Okay.
that God has never had any limitations whatsoever. The concept of limitation with God is an impossible concept to even phantom. So then when you have
All
God,
knowing, omniscient God.
right. Well, all knowing in terms of what? All information, but definitely not all experience. God had never had someone put their hands on him. God experienced death? Did God know death from the fact that he experienced death? Again, there are different types of knowledge in the world. And I think that the power of the Jesus moment is that God allows himself, he opens himself to a different interaction with mankind, which lets him learn the frailty of mankind. I mean, Hebrews says clearly, we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the
Just by the
feeling of
feeling of
our
our
infirmity,
infirmity.
right? So now there's a learning curve there that God himself experiences through Jesus that otherwise God would not have. For God to have the righteous indignation of and the righteous desire to destroy humanity through the flood with Noah, and then re-engage with humankind, go through the same steps, and at this kind of same precipice, he decides, well, the answer was not destruction of humanity, but thank you, not destruction of humanity, but it is grace. And so now let's try a different approach. We'll send Jesus, and then for Jesus to come and experience what he's experienced, and literally go through moments where he has his mind changed, where he is influenced to do things that he had no intention of doing. When a woman pushes through crowds and masses to touch him, and her faith influences his power to move on her.
Mm,
But he had
okay.
no intention. His intention is going toward Jerry's house. It's not toward this woman. So he asked the question, "Who touched me?" Now, of
And,
course,
and I'm glad you bring this up because, there is a thread of thought that begins at Genesis with God's, constant dealing with humanity and kind of, this adjustment that is always taking place with God's interaction with humanity all the way. And you bring it to Jesus as he comes into humanity and really begins to feel some
hmm
some sense of being in a human body. So
hmm
yeah, that's
hmm
good, that's very good.
so
um
and now You have no argument from me. I'm not going to argue with somebody as to whether or not God is omniscient, omnipotent, or I'm not going to argue these Greek concepts of God. I'm not going. If that's what he is, that's fine. I have no problem
I
with that.
like that you emphasize the Greek because there is definitely no that's a point of that's a point for me because
It's a different way
there
of looking at them.
there's a very different understanding the ancient and then the Hebraic and then the Greek because the Greek gives a whole different spin and I think a lot of times we forget that transition in how things are perceived and even
It,
taught.
thank you very much.
Do you need anything?
I'm probably going to want some more bacon,
All
but
right.
let's just start here.
Just let me know, okay?
Okay, okay. Um, what I would say, what I would say, Marvin, is you have to even take it deeper. For example, we have the use of this word in, and I talked about it in Sunday school the other day. This word enmity, right?
Mm,
All right. Now this word is used in, it's used a few times, but it's used in two very distinct instances. One in Hebrew, this word is translated to enmity in Hebrew, and then a different word is translated into enmity in the New Testament. All right, in Greek. Now, what it says here is God says to the woman, the serpent, that there shall be enmity between you two. And this Hebrew word for enmity is hate and conflict and constant, a hot hate, like it's really, really evil, right? But then this word enmity in the New Testament simply means obstacle. Now, it's the same translated to the same word in our Bibles, which would lead me to believe that, when you have for example, Paul, who thinks in terms of being a Jew, but expresses himself in terms of being Greek, you are translating one mode of thinking to another mode of thinking, and you are, outputting in Greek.
right,
The Greek language is birthed out of Greek a Greek context. What does it mean to be an Indo-European versus what does it mean to be a Semitic person or a half Arab or a transitional African, if you will? Man, I'm getting really liberated today. Y'all loving that one. Yeah, and
well I'm in the liberated African crowd so
right,
um so pardon me for that I read the Bible through that lens
right.
and so the New Testament is always for me what I think a lot of people forget. It is this process of not only developing the early church and following the life of Jesus Christ, but it also is a piece of assimilation.
Okay.
Because we've got this empire. You'll
Right.
That's why you're going to get these references to Caesar, but and we're not going to even talk about most of the time when you see an image of Jesus, he's wearing a toga. But moving right along.
Moving right along.
Um, so um the foot washing,
Go back to the text, John 13. Let everybody know we're going back to the Bible now.
I know, right? Now that we took a little duck walk around the pond,
Right. Let's go back to
let's
the
go
Bible.
back to the biblical text.
Right.
So with the foot washing, the how I see this from liberation to empowerment is because you have the Eucharist, you have the invitation to the table.
Right.
And so um that is the liberation, but the foot washing becomes the empowerment because it sets this example and this tone. Now, the question that comes in is going to be, is this just about um the servanthood and this example that Jesus is setting to say, providing yourself to be of service to others, to be hospitable, to be welcoming, which is very important. But then you also have another reading that I think is fed out of if you will, the traditional Hebraic understanding, which is going to be about the actual washing or the cleansing. That is, for some, this is read as a post baptismal continuation of the cleansing of sin.
Okay. Well, but then you have a different problem then,
Okay, what is?
because the different problem you get is baptism changes its meaning in the middle of the New Testament. I shouldn't say in the middle because the epistles are written first, but baptism becomes an entry into Christ, and not what it was with John, a symbolic washing away of sin. We believe that we're cleansed through the blood, right? So the sin is gone. If the baptism never happens, the sin is gone. But we're baptized into Christ. So it is a joining of things. Baptism is in now.
Right.
But that's why at the time of John writing this, I mean I think baptism would be, because think go back and look at the book of
Now
John, and you see
maybe
there
now
is
let
no
me make
baptism in that text. Not
right.
like it, not like the other
But see,
three.
that's why I'm saying that for some this reading is post baptismal. In other words, once you have been baptized
Hmm.
and you go on living your life,
Hmm.
the assumption that you still have sins that have come along in your life, and this is that washing, as we would define it, where
Hmm.
we come, that process of sanctification,
Need more bacon,
that
you think?
it let a
Oh,
man
you hadn't
examine
even done that
Yeah.
himself.
bacon yet. I'm gonna
That,
come back and check on
You
you.
give me the order, bacon.
You want 2 or
you
4
know,
more?
Two.
2. Okay.
Yeah.
in that examining yourself, there is a point at which you can no longer examine yourself, and it has to be God's perspective.
Right. Right. But
And
now.
so there is this train of thought that says, even as a Christian, that
Hmm.
part of what the foot washing does is it brings us back. It takes away that pride and all of those things that, like you were talking about the early church, like, okay, y'all have gotten out of hand. You've forgotten what you're supposed to be doing here,
Right.
and brings in, let's wash away our pride, our vanity. We're
Hmm.
going to wash away all of those things that we need to forgive others of, because we're going to humble ourselves and come back to our focus
Hmm. Hmm.
as a church,
Okay.
as a
Okay. Or
community, I should say, because
now.
I that ecclesia and koinonia still
Right.
are in
Yeah.
in weight.
Right. Right. Well, see, because again, you're having a conflict because of the same reason why John is writing this. John doesn't care about a koinonia or an ecclesia per se. He cares about the mission. The writer John, he cares about the mission. Again, he's a revivalist. He's not an evangelist.
And
He's
that is the point that I was making earlier when I said that how the the communion service is very defining for me, because the my concern is really so not who defines what title or whatever, but
right,
it should all be about what we do to advance the kingdom of God, to
right,
spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. So
right.
that's exactly my point. That was my point, and I wanted to just put a pin in
Hmm.
there while you were there.
Right, right, right. I want to go back and add an amendment to something I said earlier
Okay.
about the difference in the baptism scene in the book of John versus the other three gospels. Uh, 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 there is a baptism scene where Jesus does talk to John the Baptist, but that text is more about John the Baptist than it is about Jesus. I just want to make sure I put that in there, 'cause I don't want to. Sometimes I get to I talk, and
Yeah,
I don't want to leave I don't want to leave anybody
but you
wrong,
know
and
what?
then
I'm surprised that you did not you haven't brought up Peter.
not necessarily right now. I mean, because eventually in the text we're using, Peter does come into play. And I said something about it earlier in terms of, Peter like, hey, you can't wash my feet, And Jesus was like, no, if I don't wash your feet, you got a problem. But
I
the
know
question is,
that is so a Memphis reading of the text. If I don't wash your feet, you got a problem.
right, I don't wash your feet, dog.
That sounds so Escobar.
Yeah, if I don't wash your feet, we got to go in the backyard. You got an issue, John. No, you got
That's
an
what it
issue,
sounds.
Peter.
It sounds
You got
very
an issue.
Escobar. You know what? Either gonna do it my
But,
way or not.
the, but, but now, if you cast Peter, the head of the church, and you got John writing the church, what's to say John is not reminding Peter something?
Mm. I mean, I think he is.
You know,
I think
uh,
he
uh,
is.
um, John is writing, and by Peter, take Peter as being the titular head of the church. Period. Whoever is the head of the church,
You said potential?
no, the titular, like whoever's the head of the church. Period.
Oh,
John is
okay.
writing to them and saying, "Hey, you got to be about foot washing because the leader was about foot washing, and you got to be big enough to serve and small enough to be served at the same time. You got to be both. As the leader, you got to be both. Because notice, Peter's the only one that stands out in this text outside of Jesus. And Peter stands out. Peter has a tendency to stand out in text for absolutely no reason other than the fact that he is just audacious.
You know what? It makes me wonder, and we'll never know, but it makes me wonder what his physical presentation was like. And the reason why I say that is because, a lot of times a person's physical presentation sets the tone to make what they do and say more amplified than it would if another
Thank you
person
so
did or
much.
said those very same things.
Hmm.
So I always wonder, what was it? Was Peter just really this? He seemed to get a lot of, he drew a lot of attention.
But again, because Peter's acting audacious. What is it when they go to the mountain of transfiguration? The
I
Bible
mean,
says that they're talking to Jesus, right? The Bible clearly says that Moses and Elias are talking to Jesus, right? And then it says this right here. And Peter answered and said, ain't nobody talking to Peter. And he answered.
just
Ain't,
like
no,
church folk, just like
ain't,
church folk,
ain't nobody asked you nothing, Peter. Why
just
you
like church
why you
folk.
talking? Why is and I can
But
imagine
see,
Jesus
there's
sitting
some
around.
significance to Peter. Peter is obviously significant because he seems to always go.
He's always there. Him and John and James, they're always there. And
Yeah.
James, if you look at the text, James is the original head of the church. But he also is the one to get killed, gets killed quicker than the rest of them. Peter, James, and John. James get killed first, and they had Peter set up to get killed, and the Lord, pulled a Mission Impossible daring rescue out. Put everybody to sleep and let Peter just walk out the jail. I wish somebody would preach that part of it. He put everybody to sleep and let Peter walk out. Something like what are we talking about nowadays? Are you woke? Are you woke?
You know what? We're gonna have to have a conference call before you preach that, okay?
No, I'm not gonna preach it. That's not my
Okay.
text. That's not my text.
Okay. Okay. I was gonna say because we have to talk about that one. We
No, we
need
ain't
to
gonna talk
work
about
through
that one.
that before you preach that.
No, no,
But
no, I'm
that's
not
all right.
preaching that. That's not my text.
Okay.
That's for these
Very good.
millennials. That's for these millennials nowadays. Are you woke is for the millennials.
I know, but anyway.
Anyway,
So the the right relationship,
okay.
because I think in the foot washing, there's nothing that hones in on who we are and what we are as a community as participating in this ordinance, because it's much more challenging, I think, than taking the communion. And because we have the Zwinglian understanding of,
Oh no, no, you didn't go to Germany. No, you didn't go get this England tree. Okay, go ahead, go
it's
ahead. I'm
in the
sorry.
book. I
I'm
have I
sorry.
have my handy. I am allowed to say that because it's
It's in our manual.
I'm allowed to say that.
What
And
what what
and
what you wanna bet? I'm just saying. People gonna get mad at me. What you wanna bet? Somebody plagiarized that part. Them brothers didn't know nothing about this Zwingli.
well, even if you understand the time frame that they had to come up with the original piece, because they had what, 24, 48 hours?
Nah, they had a few days. I don't blame them. I'm not mad at
I
them.
think it's like 2 days or something they had
Yeah,
to
it was.
come up with this manual. So it is pretty amazing that that's in there, because there's a part of me that says, there's a part of me that as a well-read theologian that wants to believe there was somebody in the pack who knew that, who was able to do that. But then there's another part of me that goes, okay, let's just keep it moving.
Right.
Let's just
Yeah,
keep it moving.
that's where I am. Okay, let's just keep it moving.
But you know
Um,
what? That's important, because it's very, very important, because I've had some long arguments with people about whether or not it's literal or I've had that, with some people in this here, around here in
well,
this
that's
denomination. So
that's the problem of our manual is that it introduces some concepts
that we need to go
that
back and unpack.
either clearly need to go back and unpack, or they just sounded good, and people didn't really realize what they were saying. You know, and
Stop it.
I'm not beating us up. I understand we're under a time deadline, but I mean, even in our articles of religion, I've pointed this out often, that we have the angel Michael, angel Gabriel. I mean Gabriel, which we have in our text, right? But then they also have this angel Raphael. Raphael, first of all, is Italian. That's not a Hebrew name. Um, what is he doing as an angel in our manual? You know, they
Would
got
you stop?
no.
I'm trying
I
to
brought
stay
this
on
up.
task here, and you just
Oh no, I
never
know, I know.
let
I'm
that
sorry.
happen.
I'm sorry. I'm
You
sorry. I'm
never
sorry.
let us just stay
It's my
on
fault.
task.
It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault.
Raphael, Rafiki, and
Come on.
Raphael.
Look. I brought that up during General
Oh
Assembly, and I said,
God.
Raphael. There is a Ninja Turtle named Raphael. There's no Bible character in the King James or in NIV or whatever Protestant edition we want to claim. There is no Raphael angel.
What Protestant? What was that? What Protestant? What was that you
Yeah,
said?
we use a Protestant Bible. We don't use the Catholic Bible. Because if we use the Catholic Bible, we have some really cool stories to really preach from. I would
You know what?
love to
But
preach
now,
from Bel and the Dragon. Hey, son, how you doing?
really? Oh my goodness. I
Third and fourth Maccabees, great text in there. Great text in third and fourth Maccabees.
that is a good read, though. It really is a good read. I mean, it tears up some stuff, but it's a good read.
The Book of Enoch. We should go back and reclaim the Book of Enoch.
Do you know what would happen if we did that for real?
No, we wouldn't do that. That's a joke. I'm not. That's not
It's a
serious, Marvin.
joke, but I need you to emphasize that that's a joke,
Yes, it's a
because
joke.
later on somebody's going to watch this or listen to this, and then they're going to be like, he talking about the book. I need you to,
No,
we're
no, they're gonna
just,
call. They're gonna bring me up on charges and try to take my ordination from me. It's okay. If they take it from me, Marvin, I'll give it to you. I say y'all can have it if you give it to Marvin.
you know what,
They won't
you know
take
what,
it. They won't take
I
it.
would, just let that ride. I was getting ready to go a whole nother path, but see,
Don't
I'm
do it.
not going
Don't
down
do it,
that rabbit
Marvin.
hole with you.
Don't do it.
I'm not
You
going
know,
down that rabbit hole with you.
you know me, Marvin. You know me. You know me. I mean, I'm all for women in ministry. You know I am. I just ain't going to y'all church. That's all. But I'm all for you.
I mean, I don't have any desire to pastor. Pastor
I know you don't. I know you don't.
pastoring is
We'll
pastoring is
talk
a
about
lot.
we'll talk about this later. You have
Okay.
a female contingency watching you now that expects you to stand up for women and their rights.
No, I stand up for
Me
what
too.
God called Marva to do.
Me
So
too. I couldn't help it.
You know what? One of these days I am going to give my take on all of that, but not right now.
No, really, thank you.
Because that is a big thing that women do you do this Me Too bucket. No, I don't. I think I'm an educated woman, and I assess things based on information and facts, and that does not say I'm devoid of emotion or attachment, but it says I have some sense, and
All right, let's.
I try to frame the world through that.
So
So,
John 13 again.
oh, now you want to go back to the text. Now we ready. Let's get in the Bible. Let's go back. The safest place I know is in the Word of God.
The safest place I know.
It's amazing what can draw you back to the biblical text.
We'll bring it back to the Bible, all right? We'll bring it back. Oh my goodness gracious! But no. Here's the thing, Marvin. Let's talk about this from the standpoint of liberation in terms of, from your standpoint, because you're the liberation person. In terms of, what does it mean for me to be free enough to wash your feet and not feel degraded?
Well, first of all, according to the handy dandy,
All right.
you ain't washing my feet. You going over there with the men and the
No, ain't
women.
nobody washing. I'm not washing your feet. I ain't talking about me. What's up with me washing your feet? I'm not
I'm
talking
just
about
saying.
me.
I just wanted to make sure, because see, you have kept us away from this, and I'm gonna. That's why I brought this, because I said, you know what? I knew this conversation was going to be one that we were going to have to keep reeling it back in.
You
Okay.
ain't gonna get your man mad at me. Come on, washing my woman's feet. Oh no, hold on. I know Marvin many years. I'm not trying to. Hey, homie, calm down. I don't get no bad
Look,
inboxes, Marvin.
John 13.
Oh, now you want to talk about Jesus again?
The safest place I know is
uh,
in the Word of God.
all right. So talk about it. Talk about it.
Okay, so for liberation, and that's why I want to talk from the liberation to the empowerment. Salvation is um, it stands alone.
Right,
The work of the cross, it is finished.
right.
Salvation is available.
Mm-hmm.
So at the point that one accepts salvation, that's what brings you into the ordinances of the church, the
Okay.
baptism, the Eucharist, and the foot washing.
Right,
So as we go into that frame of reference, that is a portion of your liberating process. Like before, you were saying liberation is a means without an end, because the social justice form of liberation is
well,
always this perpetual concept. But amazingly, and here we go back to John 12, when they're having this conversation where Judas is bringing up that we could have spent this valuable oil, here comes the portion of text that they always want to use when they don't want to be of service to anybody else. We're
right.
gonna always get the pork gonna always be there.
They gonna always have,
We're
always be
gonna
some
always
poor
have
folk
pork.
around.
And so they take that text out of context, because that text was not speaking to just, well, let's just ignore their concerns. There's too
Right,
many other texts that point us, if you know what, if the church just took care of the fatherless and the widows like the Bible says, it would be a
right,
game changer. Game changer.
right.
But in the way that we
Can I jump in right here, right quick on
sure.
something?
Hmm.
It does say take care of the fatherless and the widows, but it still expects men to be the one to work and to get out there and get it. Men are not expected or not permitted, are not looked at as creatures of charity. And as a man, if you're not involved in the process, the working process, there's something wrong with you. Okay, go ahead. Because if you don't work, you don't eat. All right, go ahead. Just want to drop that in there
Yeah,
for
that I
folks
mean
who
that
don't
but
understand.
that is very much the reading of the text.
Right,
That is very, I mean, I don't know any other way that you take that text, if you assume that I had this conversation with a young female a few days ago who was on this whole kick about she didn't believe in traditional gender roles. I said, girl, you crazy. I like them. They work for me. So I don't.
You know who believes in traditional gender roles? These confused women running around here thinking that they're men because they try to act as manly and as traditionally gender roles in the man as they possibly can. They believe in gender roles as much as anybody. They just think
Well,
that they are the
so do
wrong
so
gender.
do you're right, which is the same thing that these effeminate men do. They they do their best to they
They,
overemphasize
oh
acting
my
like a
God,
woman.
exactly. They overdo it.
So
Oh,
it is but it's this understanding of not just gender roles but a smooth operating culture.
mm-hmm.
And so as we go out to do ministry and missions work, global missions, hashtag 1615, as we take that on, we take with us not only the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, but we also take some understanding of cultural norm.
See now here's the thing, Marvin, and this again is the paradox of liberation theology for me. On your end, you know, before you get off on your exit, or what I call the point of departure from the theology, liberation theology spurs you to greater action in terms of missions to the less fortunate. But then when you get the people who stay on the train a little longer than you, liberation theology is supposed to deconstruct these cultural norms and these gender roles. And it doesn't point to an ordered society like you just talked about, a smooth running society.
Well, see, this is why my frame of liberation theology is more the Latin American frame than the Black James Cone frame. And that was why I wanted to start out to draw those distinctions.
And we did, but remember that was us talking about it. We have to continue to go back to that thing in order for our audience to catch up, because some of them have not read. A lot of them know who James Cone is, but they don't know the fact that liberation theology starts as a Latin American phenomenon, or even Catholic phenomenon, really. So so when we go back to it, it gives us opportunity to kind of bring a historical perspective in.
Yeah, that it
Yeah.
was that the concept was around for hundreds of years before James Cone. Yeah,
Well,
I
well,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And
Um,
look, and nothing against, just for my Cone readers of them, nothing against Cone. I ain't got nothing against Cone.
he just his writing
Nothing
style is
against
very
Cone.
harsh. I mean, you understand
Well,
if you understand the time frame in which he was writing, his
yeah.
verbiage is it fits that time frame. But when you sit down and you're trying to read what he wrote about us being liberated and our theology of liberation, it can be a harsh read.
Give yourself do yourself a favor.
Who, me?
And don't, yeah. And
Okay.
I'm this is just a frame of reference. Go back and look at contemporary writers at this time between 1968 and 72. All right, leading up to Cone writing his book. Cone wrote his book what about was it 60, 66, 67? When did he write
Somewhere in there.
like late 60s going into the 70s? All right, this is Cone's writing frame.
Well,
All right.
and that was the reason why I also brought Howard Thurman in, because
Well,
Howard Thurman predates Cone,
that's the point I'm making.
and he's
You'll
more
see that
theological, I think.
not only no, I'm not gonna say
I
that.
know you don't like
What
Thurman, do you?
I'm gonna no, I got nothing against Thurman. I think Thurman is very theological. He's so theological that he becomes a deist by the end of by the time he's done. But the thing about
That
it
now
is,
that I'll agree with that, but
I'm saying that Cone is purposely contrasting Howard Thurman. You said we're talking about how harsh he writes. Cone is purposely contrasting Howard Thurman. He's trying to treat himself as a neo-contextualist, kind of like
okay.
going against, you know, Howard Thurman's like smooth prose and very encouraging prose. And he's trying to be in line with kind of like The Soul on Ice, Wretched of the Earth, France for Nine,
So how do you read
Radical Thinkers of the
Cone?
Day.
How do you read Cone on the con in the in within the context of all that had happened or was happening socially? Because it,
Um,
for him to be read as kind of the standard for
mhm,
Black liberation, but
mhm.
then you also have all of this peaceful, let's be peaceful and protest quietly.
But here's the thing with Cone. Cone has the benefit of a long life.
Mm,
So you get Cone kind of in
progressions.
three. Well, I want to say three progressions, but it's not fair to say three progressions because I'm thinking more in terms of you get the Cone that's in person, that's in your face, the one you talk to, the one that lectures, the one that is in class with you. You get the Cone that writes in the 60s and 70s, and then you get the Cone that shows up in about 1990. And the Cone that writes uh, Malcolm Martin in America, Dream versus Nightmare, is different than the Cone that writes Black Liberation Theology. Now, maybe it's because he's kind of writing a historical piece. I don't know.
Okay, I think I lost you. We may have lost David. His connection or something happened here. Not sure. Um, I hope we get David back because he just kind of plopped out on us. Um, and this may be, but I don't know what happened to you. I guess try to join me again, because I'm still here. As far as I know, I'm still here. Okay, I think I've got you now. Let's see. Did we get David back? I think we got David back.
Yo, what? That's. I'm sorry. Somebody decided to call me at the wrong time.
Imagine.
I mean, it called me, but right when it's getting thick too, boy. It's about to get super deep too. All right, let me
Okay,
say.
so go back to what you were saying.
All right, so the Cone you get that writes Mountain Martin in America is a different Cone. He's reflexive. He's not as harsh. He's not mad at Martin King. Uh, he doesn't just embrace everything about Malcolm X, because you would think from Cone's character that he would be loving Malcolm X and kind of not loving Martin King until like the last couple of years. Everybody, the radicals love Martin King 66 through 68. Everybody else
Mm,
loves Martin King from the beginning, from about 59 through 64, 65. You know, so you got pre Nobel Prize Martin King and post Nobel Prize Martin King. Well,
yeah.
Cone, he writes good about both of them, and he doesn't elevate Malcolm to the point of a deity. I'm a Malcolm X fan, quite honestly, but
Say it is so.
I tell you what, don't get it twisted. Many of our early preachers of the Church of God in Christ, y'all don't know this. They used to preach against things like food stamps and welfare, and even I remember I heard one message by one of our great preachers where he was preaching against, at the time, Richard Nixon and the affirmative action program that he had put forth. Richard Nixon is the originator of affirmative action, and this
Some of
preacher.
that, but I mean, some of that early, if you will, allow me to use the word prophetic.
Hmm.
I wish we had more pushback, if you will, to be prophetic, to speak to some of those concerns. I see a lot of let's go along to get along
Hmm. Hmm. Well.
now than at that time. And I'm also a Malcolm X fan because different from the work of Cone, I think for me, Malcolm X seems to address, even in his own progression, how he comes to this understanding
Mm.
of our emphasis on building the community that's best for us. Now,
I would
that
agree.
in that tension, I would say that's the piece that I think in this day that the church is challenged with,
Mm.
to break away from this go along to get along and be the church. And
But
that's why I always bring up this part of liberation and the foot washing as this ecclesia and koinonia, because you have two different things playing out, and sometimes we have to be on both sides. But where are we? Where do we land? Because it affects the whole community. And that's how our polity and our understanding of these ordinances come in, because who's invited to the table? Who's
there
invited to be at the foot washing?
there
How
is
do
a
we
well, don't lose your train of thought, because I want to jump in to agree with you about
Okay.
something, which is there is a level of radicalism that is inherent in what we do, and the question becomes, what is the nature of that radicalism? Is Christ moving us to a place, and this is where I come. Is Christ moving us to a place of no, you can bring me the check. Is Christ moving us to a place of empowerment, which is where I am. That's where I am. I'm still here for you, okay? Thank you very much. Of personal empowerment, or is Christ moving us to a place of uh, uh, of like community action? Like, why isn't people talk about Jesus had a social ministry? Yeah, he did, but you never saw Jesus one time go and say, "Hey, yo, let's go protest the Roman occupation of Palestine of Israel. We don't like it. Let's go protest." Jesus is directly dealing with his people.
He's doing what he does.
He and yeah,
He's doing
exactly,
what he does. And
exactly.
and and Timothy Brown says the church is challenged in this area because the church has paradoxically adopted a certain worldliness, and it cuts off there, so I can't read the whole
Oh,
of
you
what
gotta
he
read.
said.
Hold
But
on. I got some more. Y'all, that's where it stopped. Worldliness. Well, that's
okay.
true. That's true. That's true. But
So how do we one of the things you were talking about, I think last week, is that we have to go higher than the last generation. We have to
right,
have a higher bar, if you will.
and
So
that's why it
how do
can't be a
we do
paradox,
that?
Marva. Well,
Okay.
let me jump in. It can't.
Unpack that.
Yeah, it can't be a paradox because we have not. He said we have adopted a certain level of worldliness. Now, by adopting it, we're saying it's part of who we are, right? Now,
Mm.
whether that's the case or not, the issue is different. It might be a dichotomy, competing
Is that better
ideas.
or worse?
I'm not, well, you know, it's a distinction with a difference,
Okay.
and I think we should talk about it in terms of dichotomy, in terms of the fact that there are competing ideas in our church, but the church is still functional. You see what I'm saying? Whereas there may be several brothers that I don't see eye to eye with when it comes to some particular things that are serious and crucial, but we're still very much brothers, right? So
And
so
that
that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily a paradox, because you know we're not conflicted to the point of confusion.
exactly.
We still know
Exactly.
where the goalposts are. We just kind of there's some things that we don't like. You
Right.
know,
And that's my whole thing. Um to go back to this you brought up the Me Too thing. And that's been my thing. I always have people saying to me, "Well, why don't you go somewhere else where women are more accepted?" I said, "Because most of the places where women are accepted, I don't follow that doctrine. I
well,
can't go, I can't teach another gospel.
there are things that go along with that.
There are too many things that go along with that I don't buy into."
Hold on, Mom.
And
Wait. We have my absolute favorite liberal woman in the whole world. on right now. It's a friend of mine from college, and she was the only white girl at Tennessee State that was active in everything. She was cool. What's going on, Hillary? Star Bright Condon. What's going on, Hillary? Hopefully everything is good with you. Hopefully you're recovering nicely still. She is a cancer survivor.
All right.
Um, and she is as left as they come. But I love her. She's a sweetheart. She's a strong woman, and she's probably somewhere with Antifa right now, trying to stop the man, and and
You know
impose
what?
impose socialistic controls on all the rest of the world. But Hillary's great people. Hopefully you still hear Hillary, and you heard me say that we love you, and hopefully everything's all right with you. All right, go ahead, Marva. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Okay.
finish it.
So, for me to go somewhere else means I have to buy into another teaching, and that doesn't work for me. So it makes more sense for me to stay and understand, as you will, what the goalpost is. The goal is to progress the kingdom of God. That's the
Right,
goal. And people have always, that was a big push at ITC, was a lot of people, oh, you have to get on the soapbox for these issues. You have to get there and you need to be and I'm like, no, because that becomes a distraction.
from the gospel.
Then to the gospel, and
Yeah,
primary is the gospel. The gospel is why we do this. The gospel is there. Lost souls, hurting people, lives are why we do this. A child saved is a soul saved, plus a life. Those are the things why we do what we do. We don't, the soapbox will handle itself, because there's something that happens when you do what God has called you to do
right,
that happens no other way if you get too distracted. And that's
right,
that's been my whole thing with some of this stuff that's been going on politically. You can't let the distractions. I always tell people, whenever you see a huge distraction politically in the news, in the agendas, look for what's not being talked about,
amen on
because
that one, sister.
that's usually the more important issue than the one that they're keeping in front of the news.
To salute.
It, I mean, it's true.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
true,
Yeah,
but
that's
but
really
if you
right.
don't understand how these mechanisms pull people based on what may be um, validity in someone's story, or maybe inherently awkward in someone's story, you can get sucked into something that's distraction, and you
Mm,
can't let the distractions. And so these soapbox issues about gender are just a distraction, because the history of the Church of God in Christ has said that men and women have always done what needed to be done in ministry.
right, right,
Look at
right,
even the building of Mason Temple. The women
right,
did what they needed to do
right. It was built
to,
it was built by the women's department. For the most part, it was built by the women's department.
for the
Absolutely,
most part,
absolutely,
is
absolutely,
is is almost an understatement. But the
absolutely,
women didn't
absolutely.
go out and lay bricks. Do
No,
you
but
understand what?
they
Do
sure
you
did cook
understand?
some. They cooked some good chicken, oh baby.
They did what. So everybody plays a part.
Right,
They
everybody
weren't.
is
They
right.
didn't have to go lay bricks,
Right,
but Mason Temple is still standing.
and it will, as long
The
as the
work
trustee
is
board stays
done.
intact. Hall 2020.
Yeah, like
Marvin,
that.
we've been on for an hour now, Marvin. We got to
Oh,
go.
have we spent our hour?
Yeah,
Okay.
we boring the folks to death. But look, next week we got another text. Now, are you going to announce the text today? Or you want to announce the text early
What is
next
our
week?
text? No, go ahead, and because I don't know what the text is. What is the text for next week?
Oh, what? I get to pick it this week?
Yeah, I thought I
Oh well, shoot. I mean,
because we're still working our way towards empowerment, or are we going another angle?
no, we still there. I'm throwing my stuff in there. I'm just not announcing it as, hey, this is bipolar on empowerment theology. I'm just throwing my stuff in there. It's still in there. I'm just,
Well,
so
because to me, empowerment is so um, is or ain't. You know, it's like me arguing. It's like me arguing with people that say I ain't black enough.
Right, right,
You
right,
know, my
right, right.
question always to you is, which kind of black should I be?
Or no, huh? I'm not.
No, but no, I can't give them that simple of an answer. I always say,
I
well, what
know.
kind of black should I be?
Oh,
Should I be the, the ebonic talking, or should I be the intellectual? Because how do we identify black?
well, you should be the Marva, East Tennessee, from the
You
mountains
know what?
and the hills, black.
I will
Um,
have you know some very great people come from where I'm from.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Cause
I believe they do.
Charles Blake Jr.'s wife is from my hometown.
Is she really?
Yeah, some good things come out of them hills now.
Well, I mean, I ain't gonna talk about brother Blake's wife. I mean, I will say that she is an attractive woman. I didn't know they had them like that in the hills. I had to go to
Say
the
it isn't so.
I had to go to the country of North Carolina to search out somebody. I done been around. Let me stop talking about that. Anyway, here's the
Yeah,
thing
I'm
is
gonna
this.
need you to get on task,
Let's
please.
get on track. So the text for next week, Marvin. Let's see. Let's see. Last week I put us in Exodus, right? I put us in Exodus, right? Then we started, and then this week we went to John.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's swing back to the Old Testament then,
Okay.
and I'm going to expand it, and let's look at the first six chapters of Joshua.
I like Joshua.
That well, let's look at the first six chapters of Joshua. Now
We
here's
go
the
wait, is that we going back to recastrating? I mean
no
what you call
circumcised. Yeah, I don't particularly plan on talking about that part right there. But
it?
but
Sorry, it was just
thank you. Um, but the first six chapters, because the reason is this. Okay, the first six chapters. This is post liberation. All right,
well, and leadership shift.
and leadership shift, and I
Okay, we're
want to
not
talk
gonna get
about
into
that.
it now. We're gonna save it for
Right,
next week.
right. So let's
So I'm gonna go actually read those 6 chapters this week. I'm gonna
right.
read my Bible this week.
That's good. You need to do that. You should do that every day. Just a scripture a day will do you good. Just start with Psalms 1 and just read accordingly.
You mean I can't start with Genesis?
No, please don't. Um.
I mean, I made it all the way to chapter 3.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't want to talk about that one now, do you?
No, we're not gonna talk about that. Not today. Um. But first six chapters of Joshua, and next week let's really do a better job of pushing our giving initiative to the mission department. I've got a feeling this is gonna have to be a year-long thing. It's gonna have to be a year-long
I
project.
was gonna say that I think from now to convocation is a short time frame. I think we need a year to really build it and
Right.
to really do what we need to do
Yeah.
to
I
make
think
it
yeah.
have the impact that we want it to
Yeah, the
have.
impact we want. Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna keep pushing it, and
The GoFundMe is there, 1615 challenge.
cool. Now here's the other thing. Um, During the convocation, Marvin, I go live every night, so you're gonna have to pick a couple of nights where you can jump on there and go with me. Cause we gotta have our talk during the convocation. We gotta have our talk during the convocation, and I know you're gonna be watching online, so. If
You
anything
know what?
significant happens,
I thought about coming, but
oh
I
yeah,
don't know if it's going to work. You know, my pastor's going to say something.
he's preaching. We have not yet even announced where you're from and what church you go to. We probably should do that, but I don't want to do that.
Well,
See,
I'm from the hills of Tennessee.
right.
I am a native of East Tennessee. I come from them hills, the foothills of Tennessee.
That's right. You were in Bishop Bell's jurisdiction back in
I
the day,
was raised under the late Bishop Harold Jenkins Bell. That's right.
and
So
Bishop Bell. Was a good man. I remember him when I was in college. People have their opinions about Bishop Bell, but Bishop Bell is a good man.
You know, Bishop Bell is the reason that I really took an interest in theology.
Really?
His teaching was so theologically grounded, and so much of his teaching that you could not get in the word and then also have to supplement it. You had to supplement with reading some other materials, because he made those distinctions when he taught about communion. He taught about the different understandings of communion and why we take the understanding we do. And you're going to get that before you take this communion. So when we read this text, that's why I think reading the text before we take communion is so important, because that's how I was brought up. He kept
Mm,
us in this teaching mode of understanding what we were doing and why we were doing it.
I know what
You
you on
know,
that one.
so he brought, I mean, before we put a Christmas tree up at Christmas, we had to come, like, you got go do your research, everybody bring your stuff, and we're
Mm,
gonna talk about this. So he was a very teaching, um,
yeah.
and so when I told him that I wanted to go to seminary, he said, well, all right. So when he signed my papers, he was like ecstatic, because he was like, somebody
Wow.
gets it. Yeah.
Well, I was there with him when I was in Nashville at Tennessee State, and I wasn't necessarily trying to be the preacher at that time that I would try to be later on in life.
You mean TSU did not inspire you to get out on the corner and preach the gospel to the campus? Say it isn't so.
It inspired me to get out on the corner,
Yeah, I know.
not to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
All
Thank
right,
God for
so
Jesus.
thank God. I said it. I tell people all the time, the Lord did not save me from chewing bubble gum.
Amen. He did not save me from chewing bubblegum either.
When I needed saving, when I came and I said, Lord, I need your help, I needed help.
My God. I hear you on that
So
one.
salvation is real.
Yeah, it is.
And
Thank
every
God
now
for
and
it.
again, some of your people try to test and see. And I just say, Lord, I thank you, because you brought me from a mighty long way.
People are testing it right this very second. But we shall not give in.
Amen. All right.
All
So
right. So
next
next
week,
week,
Joshua 1 through 6,
one through
chapters one
six.
through six.
Chapter
It's
one
a
through six.
long
Yeah.
homework
It
assignment.
is, but we're not gonna dwell on. I mean, it's just gonna be key points. And maybe I should send you particular scriptures that would make it easier. Um, but we'll see.
Oh, wow. I get a cheat sheet for the quiz.
Maybe so. Maybe you get it. Maybe so.
Let me just read it, and let's see how where we, if we land in same place or different place. Let's see how it goes.
That sounds good to me. That
All
sounds good
right.
to me.
Well, you have a wonderful day, and we will move on. Um, it's been good. May the
Yes,
Lord
ma'am.
watch
Between me and thee,
while
while
we're
we're
absent
absent
one from
from
another.
another. All right, bye, Marvin.
Bye bye.